Welcome to Fantasy Football Today. We got a fun one for you. Dan and Jamey are going to be competing a lot. Fantasy Feud, name that player. Was going to do a best hair contest, but it's not even really a contest if you ask me. I'm Adam Aizer. We welcome you to Fantasy Football Today on CBS Sports Network. So there's Jamey Eisenberg. There's Dan Schneier. Dan, is it going to be awkward for you competing against your idol in Jamey?
No, it's never awkward. I look at it as a privilege to compete against my idol, Jamey Eisenberg.
It is. And it does have that tremendous hair. And Jim, you also have great rankings. So Christian McCaffrey steals some headlines before we get on the show. A 2-year contract extension for Christian McCaffrey worth an average of $18 million a year. I was just in a draft the other day. He went third. I could not believe it. It might be the lowest we ever see him go. Is Christian McCaffrey easily the number one overall player for you?
He is, yes. There's got to be a little bit of concern of all the wear and tear that he took on in the 2023 campaign, making the Super Bowl run. He was fantastic. Once again, he's been amazing with the 49ers, but you just have to understand that when he's healthy, when he's on the field, on the team that he plays for, he's going to put up tremendous numbers, better than anybody else at any position aside from the quarterbacks. And so you take McCaffrey number one, you don't think twice.
We're going to start today's show with some buy or sell based on some of the major storylines developing in OTAs. And how about we start with the New York Jets? They've earned it. They deserve that. Aaron Rodgers is back, played 4 snaps last year, tore his Achilles. He's back. But the buy or sell is not about Aaron Rodgers. It's about Garrett Wilson. Buy or sell, Jamey, I'll go to you first. Garrett Wilson should be a first-round pick.
Yeah, I was going to, interrupt you there because no matter what you're going to say, it was going to be positive about Garrett Wilson. He's a star. He's been fantastic at times during the first 2 years of his career. But now that he has the quarterback that we were waiting to see last year, the sky's the limit. Third-year breakout is coming for Garrett Wilson. He was very good as a rookie with everybody but Zach Wilson, averaging over 17 PPR points per game, at times over 21 PPR points per game. And so last year was very frustrating not having Rodgers play. Now that Rodgers is back, Garrett Wilson will be an absolute star, should be drafted in round 1.
To buy for me too. Fourth most targets last year, 7th most snaps among wide receivers. I love the projection I just saw from our Sportsline people. That's 178 targets. I could see it happening with Aaron Rodgers and in that Nathaniel Hackett system.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, in 13 healthy seasons, he's produced a top 24 wide receiver 11 times, a top 15 wide receiver 9 times, and a top 5 wide receiver in 8 of 13 seasons. Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers hopefully ready for a big season. This is the year. This is the Jets' year, everybody. All right. Topic number 2. So Justin Jefferson just got a 4-year, $140 million contract extension, but we did have some big-time wide receivers missing OTAs, including Jefferson, but CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk. Dan, I'll start with you on this one. Buy or sell, none of the wide receiver holdouts actually matter for fantasy football.
I'm going to sell I'm going to sell that because I think one might matter, and that's Brandon Ayuk. The Brandon Ayuk situation has started a lot. We've seen these other ones, T. Higgins essentially saying, look, I'll play under the tag. But when it comes to Ayuk, it looks like there could be something to that. And the 49ers did just draft a first-round wide receiver this year, what does that tell Brandon Ayuk for his future with the team? So they've already re-signed Debo. First-round wide receiver drafted this year. It's a little tricky there, and they're limited on salary cap space, especially after the Christian McCaffrey extension. So that's the one that scares me a little bit.
I agree with Dan 100%. Ayuk is a little bit, terrifying because we spent some time on our podcast on Tuesday, Adam, talking about this, that there's a chance of him maybe digging his heels in and saying, I'm just going to get my accrued service for the 2024 campaign and then go get paid someplace else. As Dan alluded to, Ricky Pearsall, a first-round pick, they have their replacement option if needed. I also think T. Higgins can also make a stand as well, probably just training camp. He should be there for week 1. His situation is a little bit different. But those two guys missing time, especially Higgins with the injuries he suffered last year, Joe Burrow with the injuries he suffered last year, both those guys are going to be potentially troubling if there are contract issues looming as we get closer to week 1.
Yeah, Higgins was wide receiver 13 per game in 2022. He had a terrible 2023. But if you can get him back to his 2022 production, you'll probably have a steal. I don't think may not even be a top 20 wide receiver in ADP. All right, next topic. It's about Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams was the number 2 running back in fantasy on a per-game basis last season. He was terrific, but he missed OTAs with a foot injury, which they downplayed. They did draft Blake Corum, however, in the 3rd round. So buy or sell, Jamey, Kyren Williams, again, number 2 per game last year, will not be a top 10 running back this season.
Yeah, I'm going to sell that. I think he's going to still be a top 10 guy. I don't know if he'll be a top 5 guy. He's falling out of my top 5 this year just based on the addition of Blake Corum because there really wasn't anybody to take him off the field for significant stretches last year when he was healthy. But you do have to be a little bit concerned. This is a guy that had a foot problem in his rookie campaign, missed some time last year with a knee injury, broke his hand at the end of the season last year. And again, a potential compliment, I don't want to say replacement, compliment coming in. Now, the nice thing is if you are in the Kyren Williams camp, you see the addition of Corum. You see this injury. It will drive down the price. You may be able to get him toward the back end of round 2, where we were taking him in the first drafts that we were doing this offseason, still in round 1. So I still think he has top 10 upside, still has potentially top 5 upside, as we saw last year. Fantastic offense that should get better with an improved offensive line. But I don't think you should be drafting him in the top 5. Get him closer to running back 6 or 7. You'll be better off with the way you draft him in that regard.
I'll buy Adam because I think they drafted Blake Corum for a reason. And I think the volume-based production that we saw from Kyren last year was more based on necessity. The Rams didn't have much behind him. Now they do have behind him with Blake Corum. And I am a little concerned with the injury history, as well as just the draft capital they spent on him. I do like that he is excellent in pass protection. It's been a big reason why he stays on the field, but that's something Blake Corum is not shying away from either. So I think he will eat a little bit into the production and he'll fall just outside the top 10.
Let's talk about a running back who's going to go a little bit later than Kyren Williams and Josh Jacobs. So we saw Packers coach Matt LaFleur talk about platooning his running backs. He said, quote, "No matter who the runner is, typically we'd like to platoon those guys." Dan, buy or sell, Josh Jacobs will be in a platoon that will hurt his fantasy value.
I'm selling this one here. I think the Packers have never really made this kind of splash in free agency at the running back position. They re-signed one of their own with Aaron Jones a little while ago, but this was a big move for them, and I think he's going to be a focal point of that offense behind him. You know, A.J. Dillon's added back to the mix, but coming off a really disappointing season. Yes, they did add Marshawn Lloyd in the draft. He's an explosive talent, but I have my concerns with how quick he's going to get on the field from a pass protection standpoint and from picking up that system, which is a more complicated version under Matt LaFleur. So I am a believer in Josh Jacobs this year for the bounce back season. Maybe not reaching, obviously, those 2022 levels, but I think he'll be a featured back in that offense.
Yeah, I am going to buy this. I think we've seen this from Matt LaFleur where he's used Aaron Jones and unfortunately probably a little bit too much of A.J. Dillon. And I think they kind of learned their lesson a little bit last year and how things went for Aaron Jones, where he missed 6 games and parts of others due to hamstring injuries. And while A.J. Dillon struggled in that regard, I think that's why they kept A.J. Dillon and drafted Marshawn Lloyd with a 3rd-round pick. And I think we'll see Lloyd be a factor on some passing down situations. And Dan's right; he's got to learn how to be a significant contributor in pass protection. So hopefully he can do that. But A.J. Dillon could do that also. And you're already getting those offseason reports about A.J. Dillon. Happened today. He's slimmed down. He's looking svelte. He's going to have a opportunity to prove himself. And so Jacobs has never been in this situation for a significant stretch of the season where he's had to share work. And so we'll see how that impacts him because he has been very good as a volume back, but has been a volume back. And so I think you should still draft him as a high-end number 2 running back, but don't overvalue him because of this move. Don't overvalue him because of his name and expect to see him off the field at times because of Lloyd and because of Dillon.
Yeah. For those of you who listen to the podcast, you know, Dan and I have a tennis match coming up. I would recommend to Dan getting in the A.J. Dillon mode and getting in the best shape of your life. You are going to need it, Dan. And I will go to you on this one here about potentially another platoon with D'Amico Ryans, the head coach of the Texans, saying that Dameon Pierce and Joe Mixon, quote, "as a 1-2 punch will be very beneficial to us all." So, Dan, buy or sell? I'm going to beat you 6-2, but also buy or sell. Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce will be a 1-2 punch.
Clearly selling on the tennis front, but we'll use that for another day. As far as the fantasy front goes, I am buying that they will be a 1-2 punch. I looked into this recently because I'm doing player outlooks for the site, and Joe Mixon's numbers are not promising as far as what he's been able to do independent of his situation with Cincinnati. He's been afforded a lot of snaps, a lot of touches, and a lot of good situations, and those opportunities have not always led to fantasy points. So I'm buying this because I think Dameon Pierce will prove to be as effective on a per snap basis as someone like Joe Mixon, and he'll work his way back in the mix. I am a little bit concerned with how Pierce adjusted to Bobby Slowick's run blocking scheme last year, but now he has a year additional in that scheme, including a full offseason to kind of get the feel down, understand how to set up the blocks, and get back to the level we saw in 2022. So this is a buy for me.
Yeah, I think they brought in Mixon to be their guy, and we saw last year that Pierce had every opportunity to beat out Devin Singletary, and Singletary is just one of those guys that we're going to talk about that everywhere he goes will probably end up being the leading rusher. He wasn't Buffalo, he wasn't Houston last year, probably be the case for the Giants as well. So it may not be Pierce as the second guy. It could be somebody else working in place of him. But I think Mixon, the Texans have showed their hand. They're going all in to try and win a Super Bowl. Stephon Diggs on a one-year rental, going out and making the big splash to get Danielle Hunter. Obviously, what C.J. Stroud showed as rookie last year, and then adding what I think is a running back upgrade because I don't think Devin Singletary is that special. Now you can make the same case about Mixon, but clearly he's been more productive than Singletary. So I do think Mixon has proven to be a workhorse. He will be a workhorse once again. And by the way, Dan, Adam's new nickname is E4. If you listen to a podcast, you'll understand why. Does not know how to play second base.
Yeah, it was not my best day to film. We'll say that. All right, listen, when we come back, I'm going to try to stump my coworkers. We're going to play some Name That Player up next on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, and we are going to play some Name That Player. How well do these guys know the players that they rank? Let's find out right now. All right, here we go. Our first player. Here are some clues. He attended Sierra College. No one's getting it yet. Okay. He set a career high in receiving yards in 2023. He was 7th among wide receivers in yards, but 24th among wide receivers in catches. A big yards per catch guy. How about this? 12.8 yards per target were the most by a wide receiver since 2018. And finally, player A had only 9 catches in 3 playoff games.
Oh.
He played 3 playoff games. After Sierra. Brandon Ayuk it is. Yes. Jamey for the win. Congratulations, Jamey.
The Sierra College thing really threw me off there.
Yeah, you know, you're supposed as the creator of this game, you're supposed to tell us the position.
The position, I mean, how many? I said among wide receivers, like 6
Well, yeah,
times.
You got to it eventually, but, you know, I mean, you're supposed to give us the position.
I made the glaring mistake of forgetting that Adam always throws in like a little trick at the beginning of these to try to throw you off, and I have to really bake that in for the next one.
Yeah, Adam really invented that on his own.
You 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. You like it?
Oh, yeah. Who doesn't like Brandon Ayuk?
Yeah, we spent some time again on Tuesday talking about Ayuk and his outlook, and you know we touched on a little bit with the contract situation. The Ricky Pearsall audition is going to be somewhat fascinating to see how they use him. Obviously, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle are going to be significant factors. Ayuk is never going to dominate receptions when everybody's healthy. He's going to be a yardage and touchdown type of player, and we know what the 49ers do in terms of getting guys open in their yak and just making a lot of plays after the ball's in their hands. So in PPR, he loses a little bit by comparison to the elite level wide receivers. He's still a very good number 2 fantasy option, and hopefully the contract situation is settled and he's there week 1, ready to go. I like him better than Deebo Samuel in full PPR because of the reception total that will favor him. But this could be a huge year for Ayuk if he's out to prove that he needs a new deal to be paid like these other wide receivers, because he could not necessarily reset the market next offseason, but he could be the most coveted wide receiver next offseason if, in fact, all these other guys get paid.
Just trade him so we can love him and Deebo Samuel, right, folks? Am I right?
Yeah, that's
all right. True. Jamey wins round 1. By the way, Dan did say during the break, quote, "I'm terrible at these games." So, Dan, you better.
Well, to be fair, the first time I ever played, you put me against Heath, who's like a savant when it comes to fantasy football Jeopardy. So.
All right, let's go to our next guy. He's a top 12, Jamey, wide receiver in our consensus rankings. He plays wide receiver, top 12, but he has never finished, you're welcome, never finished higher than wide receiver 18 per game. He has, over the last 2 seasons combined, the 5th most catches among wide receivers. Last year, I think Jamey's about to get it, he ranked 74th out of 80 wide receivers in explosive. No, that's a minimum of 50 targets. 74th out of 80 wide receivers in explosive play rate. Dan, the next guess is yours. He has caught passes from 9 different quarterbacks in 4 seasons.
I know. Yeah.
Oh my God, why is this such a struggle for me? Top 12 in our consensus. Let's think about this one. I
Give you
don't
5
want
seconds.
not.
4,
Oh boy.
3,
Why am I
2, 1. Just say a name.
Michael Pittman.
Devontae Adams?
Michael Pittman is the correct answer.
Oh, Pittman.
Pittman. Dan, do I give Jamey the win on that, or just like it's a draw?
You said
Honestly,
unlimited
it was one of
guesses,
the-
so yes, I get the win.
If I have to be honest, it was one of the saddest performances of my life there to not even come up with a guess. I will do better on the next question.
Well, what do you
Just
think
went
about
from
it?
6'2" to 6'1".
But yeah, that's right. Dan, what do you think about Pitt? What do you think about this projection? He's been well over that in receptions each of the last 2 years, but another new quarterback to deal with, and only 5 touchdowns, which is not low for him, unfortunately.
This projection scares me a lot. I'm not as sold on the targets being there in this offense. We don't really have much of a sample size with Anthony Richardson. It's a small sample size. Gardner Minshew, completely different style quarterback. I think they'll get back to a lot of the zone read with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson working together. It's a really good cheat code for the Colts. It's very hard to stop. They get an extra man in the bot. They're going to have an extra man to block in those situations. So I think the ball might be spread around a little bit. Josh Downs, AD Mitchell's a receiver I love coming out of the draft. So I don't love this projection. He's not on my targets list.
All right, let's go to our next player here. Player number 3. Jamey's up 2-0. This player was the 19th running back selected in his draft class. That means he's a running back. He has averaged 5 yards per carry in his career. In the last 3 seasons combined, he has 8 rushing touchdowns. But in those 3 seasons, he's been RB13, RB11, and RB25 per game. And he will be facing his old team in weeks 4 and 17. That must mean he's in the same division as his old
Same
team.
division, yeah.
Oh, Aaron Jones.
Hey, Schneier on the board. Nice
Got
work.
one, finally.
I like this. I could take 1,300 total yards and 8 touchdowns. That would be, I think, great based on where he's going, Jamey, if he hits that number.
Yeah, based on where he's going for sure. And you see here, running back 28 in our projections. I think he's actually 29th for me. And that's his age, which is a big concern. You know, last year he missed 6 games and parts of others with hamstring problems and finished the season on a monstrous tear, 5 straight games, including the playoffs, with at least 111 yards rushing. So he was fantastic for the Packers. But as we saw last year, and really the Kevin O'Connell era, the running back production has not necessarily been there. Now, you could say an aging Dalvin Cook and struggling Alexander Madison / Ty Chandler last year, and they were trying a lot of things to get their running game going. Madison actually did not score a rushing touchdown last year at all. Ty Chandler barely found the end zone. They tried to resurrect Cam Akers before he suffered an Achilles tear. So is Aaron Jones the answer at his age? I hope so, but I don't think he's going to get over 1,000 total yards. I'm very concerned about running backs at this age. He actually turns 30 in December. So this is the point where the start of the breakdown typically happens, or has happened already, and that felt like was the case with Jones last year. There's not a lot of running back targets in this offense. They're among the worst teams at throwing to the running backs. Now you're asking a rookie quarterback to support that in the passing game as well. So I prefer Jones more as a flex. He's not somebody that I'm planning to aggressively draft this year, but if I get him at the right price, if I go hero RB or zero RB, and he is my RB2, I'll be okay with that, but just not somebody that I'm super excited about.
All right, we got one more player here. Jamey's up 2-1, Schneier. So you can even it up. And I'll tell you what, if you get it on your first guess, since Jamey got Pittman on his second guess, I'll give you an extra half a point, and you will be the victor. Okay.
This I love how the rules can change mid-game. That's my favorite thing about an Aizer game.
Yeah, of course. This last player scored 16 or more PPR fantasy points in 5 of his first 8 games, and then 1 of his last 9 games. Great first half, bad second half. He was top 5 in receiving touchdowns. He played with 4 quarterbacks in 2023. He played in the ACC and the Pac-12. He is wide receiver 41 in our consensus rankings. I can't believe you guys are not getting this.
I got it. I was going to give Dan a chance.
Oh, okay. No, just go for the kill, Jamey.
Oh, Jordan Addison.
Jordan Addison is correct. Let's see our Jordan Addison.
I was going to say Calvin Ridley, which wasn't going to work out.
It definitely was not going to work out. And say it there.
And he only played in one conference.
Here's our projection for him. A lot of touchdowns there, but not much else. Dan, what do you think? Too high, too low on Addison?
For me, it's a little too high for a projection. I have a lot of concerns with how this passing offense is going to work. I do agree with what Jamey said. Like, they're still going to lean on the pass. They don't have a lot of diversity in their run game. They basically only run zone. So it's very hard for them to be effective in that regard. But I'm not so sure even with a pass-heavy game plan, they'll be effective. I have concerns about Sam Darnold's ability to move the football, and I have concerns about J.J. McCarthy in year one as an NFL quarterback when he's not given the situation he had at Michigan. So I think that could potentially bring down the entire pass offense. I know it worked last year with Mullins and a little bit with Dobbs, though that was more of a running style. But I think Mullins had some years in the NFL, and he has a little bit more experience and production, I would say, than even Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy. So I have concerns here.
Okay,
it's reasonable to have concerns.
Oh, cue the confetti. We got to celebrate Jamey's win. Congratulations, big guy.
Thank you. I was just going to say that, Addison, one of 6 receivers with 10 touchdowns last year. TJ Hawkinson potentially missing the first half of the season should be a big plus for him. So at the right price, I think Addison's a good buy.
Well, listen, there haven't been a lot of drafts yet. Obviously, we're in early June, but there have been some. We do have some average draft position to look at. When we come back on Fantasy Football Today, Jamey and Dan will tell you who's undervalued, who's overvalued right now. We're back here on Fantasy Football Today, looking at early average draft position, early ADP, and we're using FantasyPros PPR average draft position. A lot of initials in there, right? But kind of a weird trend we're seeing in this early ADP is like nobody seems to want to draft running backs. RB10 is going in round 4. That's pretty weird. The wide receivers going well ahead of the running backs. We're talking about 26 or 27 wide receivers off the board before the 10th running back in PPR. So we'll kind of react to that, but also not just where the running backs are being drafted, but amongst running backs where they're being drafted. Anyway, Jamey and Dan have overvalued and undervalued players. Let's take a look at Jamey's list of overvalued players. So these are players going too early, according to FantasyPros average draft position. Devontae Adams, DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, Malik Neighbors, 28th, people? What? And Dave Flowers. Take it away, Jamey.
Well, I mean, you said it. Wide receivers are getting pushed up, so that's part of this. And I'm gonna guess. I don't know for sure. I don't want to speak for FantasyPros and their ADP, but it could be some rookie drafts that are pushing Malik Neighbors into that range. But there's no way I'm taking these guys at this cost. As you see, you see the list in red of where I would draft these guys. So it's in a lot of cases 10 plus spots behind these guys. And I love a lot of these players as talents. I think Malik Neighbors is gonna have a fantastic rookie season. I think Zay Flowers is a solid player in his second year in Baltimore's offense. But if you have to pay a round 3 price for almost all of these guys and a round 2 price for Devontae Adams at 31 years old, there's no chance I would draft these guys. I would much rather have a lot of the running backs that I'll show on the undervalued list ahead of these players. So DJ Moore, crowded wide receiver core. Same thing for Stephon Diggs. Malik Neighbors, rookie again, shouldn't be drafted in the 3rd round. And Zay Flowers still on a run-first team, still has to, I think, prove himself without Mark Andrews because he was great without Mark Andrews last year. So I'll let anybody else draft all these players at this price tag.
Let's take a look at Dan's overvalued list here, and keeping in mind that like, Travis Etienne going 41st, well, he is RB10. Rachaad White going 64th, is that overvalued? Probably not. But maybe amongst running backs, he's RB15. So I think these are just players that Dan doesn't really love, but you can explain your list.
Yeah, I mean, with ETN to start there, it's a tale of 2 seasons. After the week 9 bye, he had just one RB1 finish, meaning top 12, and he finished outside the RB2 range in 5 of his last 9 games. We've already seen with just 4 total touchdowns. We've already seen talk of Tank Bigsby taking the mental jump that he needed during the early part of the OTAs. I just think you look at the dip in production from a yardage standpoint and touches clearly because he went from averaging 22.3 touches before the bye to 16.3 after. Sure, according to this ADP with running back so devalued, you may not be worried, but I am worried, especially when you consider the Jaguars' offensive line was dead last in yards created before contact. Really not a good run blocking unit. A few of the other guys I find to be a little bit overdrafted. Trey McBride, just 3 touchdowns last year. I felt like his rise was very target dependent, and the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to change a lot of things in that offense, specifically in the red zone. A few other guys that I don't like. Keenan Allen, 53 overall. Look, 32 years old for Keenan Allen, dealing with injury problems every single season, now enters a Shane Waldron system that didn't really do much for Jackson Smith and Jigba as the slot. In addition to that, building a whole new rapport with a brand new quarterback, going over to a different conference. I just think there's a lot working against him. Anthony Richardson, I don't hate him this year. I see the upside, but looking at the position, you can get Brock Purdy 30 picks later. He was the 7th most fantasy points per game among quarterbacks. Tua 40 picks later. Herbert 50 picks later. Even Trevor Lawrence and Jaden Daniels almost 60 picks later. As far as Richardson versus Daniels goes, I'm not so sure there should even be a 10 or 20 pick difference there. And then finally, Rachaad White. Look, there's a fun story with Rachaad White. I tweeted out some of his film last year during before Beyond the Box Score show we did, and he reached out to me via DM and said, "Look, you're right about these clips. You broke them down well. I'll be better." And after that point on, he broke out as a fantasy running back. So I hate to say it and put him on this list, but if you look at the advanced numbers, he was 42nd in missed forced tackles per attempt, 40th in explosive run rate, and 45th in yards after contact per attempt among 49 qualifying running backs according to Fantasy Points data. So that scares me. I feel like a lot of what he did last year was volume based, but he was only 43rd in targets per route run, which tells me that he ran a lot of routes. Will that continue with Dave Canales gone as the offensive coordinator there? I'm not so certain. And they did draft Bucky Irving in this draft, who I really like coming out of Oregon. So there are some concerns there for me with Rachaad White repeating what he did last year.
Well, I know Jamey does not agree with you on Travis Etienne as we take a look at Jamey's undervalued list. These are players who are going too late, and it's the running backs, but Etienne 41st, and you like Travis Etienne, I guess. You got Pacheco, Cook, Rachaad White. Rachaad White being that far behind those other three is a little surprising to me, Jamey, and you also like the value on Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah, I'll go back to what Dan said about ETN. Yes, the Jaguars' offensive line was very bad last year, but they made the move to get Ezra Cleveland. Cam Robinson should be back. I think the offensive line will be much improved this year, which would help ETN. And we heard the story last year about Tank Bigsby being a part of this offense, and he was absolutely miserable that Dearness Johnson was playing over him. So Bigsby's got a lot to prove before I think ETN loses value. And we may see ETN get a bump in the passing game because of over 200 targets vacated by the loss of Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones. So obviously Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis were brought in, but I think we'll see ETN have a little bump in the passing game also. So I'm perfectly fine with him in round 2. Love him at 41st overall if that's where you're getting him. And for Rachaad White, Baker Mayfield's calling card has kind of been underrated as a guy who throws to his running backs. He did it in Cleveland. He did it in Carolina. He did it last year in Tampa Bay. I think he'll do it again with Rachaad White. Could be Bucky Irvin as well. It's a great point by Dan, but I still think Rachaad White's role in the passing game will be solidified. But if you're getting any of these running backs at this cost, James Cook, over 50 catches last year. We talked about this on a previous podcast on Fantasy Football today. I think he'd be a 70 catch guy this year with the receiving core looking like it is in Buffalo. And then Jonathan Brooks, we have to keep an eye on the knee injury and exactly when he'll be back after suffering an ACL tear at Texas last year. But if he is ready for week 1, which is the way that he's tracking right now, 92nd overall for a Dave Canales running back, and all he has to do is outplay Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders, which those guys were not exactly great last year, an improved offensive line, and improved Bryce Young. Love the setup for him, and the same thing goes for Isaiah Pacheco. So clearly it's a sight thing that the Fantasy Pros ADP is pushing down running backs, and that's why they're so low. But if you're going to get these guys at this cost, take your receivers early and then just load up on these running backs. You'll have a great fantasy team.
Yeah, Brooks is RB 26 in this ADP. And let's take a look now at undervalued players according to Dan Schneier. Go ahead, Dan. You got Zay Flowers, Lad McConkey, Jaden Daniels, Devin Singletary, and Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, look at what Flowers did after Mark Andrews, and I'm not scared off by the return of Mark Andrews. I think that what they did is realize that he could be a bigger part of the offense, particularly in the red zone where he had 6 targets there. And you carry that over to the postseason, and I think what we're going to see is here year 2 of the rapport with him and Lamar Jackson, Odell Beckham gone from the mix, more targets funneled his way, but also more importantly, them turning those targets into something more. Zay Flowers was a 3-level winner at Boston College on film. And in the vertical game, I think that's really where he'll make his mark and take the biggest jump from the improved rapport with him and Lamar Jackson. Lad McConkey, to me, just a phenomenal watch on film. He was 98th percentile in his receiving grade, according to Pro Football Focus, against single coverage, and 91st percentile in separation percentage. That's the type of player he is. He can beat single coverage, and he also ran a 4.39 40-yard dash with elite numbers in the 10 and 20-yard splits. This is a much better athlete than people realize. I don't think it will take long for him to be the number 1 target in that offense, even if it is as run-heavy as people expecting. I'm still going to see maybe 125, 130 targets there. Great value at that price. Jaden Daniels, to me, is probably the biggest free square in fantasy football right now. Last year, en route to the Heisman Trophy, 50 total touchdowns, 90 plays on his own of 20+ yards in 2023, combined with his rushing and passing. 22-0 touchdown interception rate on throws of 20+ yards with a 67% completion rate. I don't think people realize how insane that is. And sure, it's college football and it's carrying over, but that level dual threat should not be going after the top 100 picks in any fantasy draft. Finally, the last two, Devin Singletary going in the 110 overall. He steps in as the lead back for the Giants, and the only competition is a pair of 5th-round picks in Eric Gray and Tyrone Tracy. Yes, I like Tyrone Tracy a lot, but 5th-round pick with a lot of room to grow as far as converting from wide receiver to running back. In weeks 9 through 18, Devin Singletary averaged 19 touches and 86.6 total yards en route to being a running back 2, RB2 and 21 overall. I think that's fair to assume something like that, again, with the Giants in that RB2 range. If you're getting that at 110, it's great value. And finally, Rico Dowdle. Like, I'm not really sold as why he's still going so late, 141st overall here. Sure, they added Ezekiel Elliott, but Ezekiel Elliott's underlying numbers are really, really poor with the Patriots. That's been a downward trend for him. Meanwhile, Rico Dowdle was 16th in the NFL in yards after contact per attempt. Really impressive numbers on the underlying metrics. I think he's a better running back overall than Zeke at this point in his career, and I think he'll have a much bigger role than people expect. And to get that 141 overall in a really good offense with an offensive line that continues to improve with the addition of Tyler Guyton in the draft this year, I just love that value.
Can I ask you guys a question as Giants fans? How many receptions will Devin Singletary have from Drew Lock throwing in passes?
Well, that's a good question. If the Giants start as poorly as people expect, I think they'll turn to Drew Lock pretty fast because Daniel Jones has the $23 million injury guarantee in his contract, similar to Derek Carr and Russell Wilson of the past. So a projection could be maybe we see 10, 11 games of Drew Lock. The Giants aren't winning early, maybe more. So let's go with 25 receptions from Drew Lock.
What was Daniel Jones's over/under in touchdown passes? Was it like 8 or something?
It was 9.5, but I think that turned out to be a fake prop that somebody propagated on the internet.
If he gets, take the under. All right, listen. Jamey claimed victory in Name That Player earlier. Dan has a chance to draw even with Fantasy Feud. Let's see what happens when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. It is time for Fantasy Feud. I've got 3 categories for the guys. We're going to find out if they have the guts to actually play. Instead of passing, they always pass. I suspect they will not have the guts. But the way you buzz in is just by saying your name. That's the best we're going to do here. Let's go to our first category. The top 6 answers are on the board. Here's the category. Tight end touchdown catch leaders.
Jamey.
Top 6. Jamey.
Sam Laporta.
He is the number 1 answer. Would you like to pass or play?
Oh, it's more fun to watch Dan sweat. Let's pass.
I happen to agree with you on this one. Okay. You got 5 more touchdown catch leaders at the tight end position from last year. Sam Laporta is off the board. Who else led the position?
Okay, Dan. Let's go with. I already missed the rules.
You get guesses until you get 3 strikes.
David Njoku.
David Njoku is correct. Good job. He's like 3rd or something.
I keep going or no?
Keep going. Yes, you keep going. Have you ever seen the show? You ever watch?
No, I have never seen Family Feud actually. Somehow, some way. It's on my most embarrassing list. I didn't think we would have to get to that point where I had to admit that, but clearly I thought wrong. So with my next guess, I am going to go with, how about Jake Ferguson?
Jake Ferguson is incorrect. As 1 strike. 1 strike.
Okay. How about Travis Kelce?
Travis Kelce is, sorry, I'm getting my list here. Travis Kelce is incorrect.
Oh, my God. How about George Kittle?
Yes, that one is correct. All right, we're 3 off the board. We have Laporta, Njoku, and Kittle. And there are 3 more to get, and you don't have any strikes left. So if you miss here, Jamey gets to steal.
Do I get a pass still, what Jamey did, or no? That's not part of the game.
Just guess. Just try to find a tight end. Not a touchdown.
Okay. No pass allowed. No pass allowed. Give me. Let's think about this and try to get this right. And let's take with my final guess Dalton Schultz.
No. Great guess. Not bad. He and Kelsey just missed the cut. Okay, Jamey, Sam Laporta, George Kittle, and David Njoku are off the board. Give me one more tight end who is top 6 in touchdown catches.
Cole Kmet.
Nice. Cole Kmet is. I did not. This is a tough one. You have Cole Kmet on there. You have actually Mark Andrews, who had 6 touchdowns in only 10 games, and Hunter Henry was the last one. So it was actually
those NFC North outlooks.
Sam with 10 and the rest with 6. I just figured Dan had edited them, so maybe he would have known. All right, next category. You got to sweep the board, and you got to get them both, Dan. Remember, if you know, say your name and you go first. Top 6 carries inside the 5-yard line. Players with the most carries inside the 5-yard line. Jamey.
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts is number 6. So that means, Dan, you get a guess here to see if you can beat that. Get one of the top 5.
Derrick Henry.
Oh.
Derrick Henry is incorrect. So, Jamey, pass or play?
Oh, you know I'm passing. Too easy. Dan.
All right, Dan. That was amazing.
What Derrick Henry not an answer?
Top 6 in carry inside the 5-yard line. So far, we have just Jalen Hurts.
Okay. Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon is correct. He's 3rd.
There we go. Starting to cook a little bit. David Montgomery.
David Montgomery is correct. He's
all
tied
right.
for
We're
4th.
cooking a little bit. Saquon Barkley.
That is incorrect.
Got the injury. Now I'm reeling. Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert
is one of the 2 who led in this category. So what we have, Mostert, Mixon, Montgomery, and Hurts. Only 1 strike and 2 left on the board.
Wow. Gus Edwards.
Holy moly. Gus Edwards tied with Raheem Mostert. Only 1 left, Dan Schneier.
Oh, no. This is the tough one. I don't want to. Why do I want to? All right. Isaiah Pacheco. This feels wrong.
It feels wrong for a reason. It is wrong. All right. Jamey's going to start thinking about his steal.
So I got one more guess to make. Kyron Williams.
Ooh, even though he missed all those games, huh? No, incorrect. Not bad, though. I was impressed. 5 out of 6. Jamey, if you get this right, you win the feud. Top 6 carries inside the 5-yard line. Who do you got?
I'm torn between 2 guys. One's a quarterback, one's a running back. I'm going to take the running back and go Christian McCaffrey over Josh Allen.
Oh, what a guess. Christian McCaffrey it is. Jamey wins.
How did I forget about the RB1 overall, who had like 25 touchdowns last
it's
year?
funny because like you obviously hit on 2 guys that scored 13 plus touchdowns in Raheem Mostert and Gus Edwards. The third was McCaffrey, and so I was hoping you weren't going to say him.
It was too obvious for me to pick somehow.
All right. Well, the last category we're going to skip, actually, because Jamey already won. It was the top 5 running back game in PPR, and maybe we'll save it for another show. We're going to be back with some fill in the blank to finish things off on Fantasy Football Today. Back for one final segment of Fantasy Football Today. It is fill in the blank. Going to start with this for Jamey only. Dan was blank at Fantasy Feud.
Dan.
Well said. Hey, listen, Schneier, I've really taken a lot of shots at you, and I want you to get one in at me before the end of the show, okay? It can't be that one-sided. But I do want to thank our audience. There you go. I want to thank our audience for these fill in the blanks. This is from Twitter. So here we go. Tajay Spears will be a top blank running back if Tony Pollard is actually done like we thought.
15.
I was thinking exact 15 as well. I can't Can't think of a different number there. I'm still not as enthused by that offensive line, despite the additions, and more importantly, Will Levis moving the football on a consistent basis.
In Brian Callahan, we trust.
Yeah, there we go. Zach Moss will finish as a top blank running back in 2024.
Top 20 for me.
22.
Okay.
Again, I just don't think.
Go ahead, Dan.
No, this goes back to what we were discussing before. I just feel like they're not ready to trust Chase Brown yet, and Zach Moss will still have a high snap share there.
Jamey.
All right, Jamey.
I think it will take an injury for Zach Moss to lose his job, but that's been the case wherever he's been.
All right, Jamey, why don't you go first and Dan can follow. Will Levis has a blank % chance of finishing as a top 10 fantasy quarterback this season.
20% chance. Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins have peak seasons for where they are at this point in their careers. So, top 30-ish caliber seasons. Chico Okonkwo remains a factor. Tyler Boyd has an impact, and the running backs make plays out of the backfield. And I think just with Bill Callahan running the offensive line, Brian Callahan calling plays, Will Levis has a chance to surprise some people.
I'm going to go with 0.57% chance, under 1% chance. I don't believe in Will Levis. This reminds me of one of my favorite moments of fantasy football today when I was just reeling off his game logs from his final season in Kentucky when he was ripping 179 yards, 190 yards. I just don't buy the talent there. And more importantly, the position is just so deep at quarterback. Like, I look into it and I'm looking at guys like Brock Purdy. I mean, we rank Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence outside the top 12, and that's because we can't fit anybody else in. I know some people don't love their outlooks as well, but I don't see it happening there.
All right, we are going to go rapid fire for the rest of these. We'll go to Jamey and then to Dan. Just an answer for the blanks here. I don't know why this one has 2 blanks, but let's try it. Blank will surpass Christian McCaffrey in points this year if blank stays healthy.
Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson will surpass Christian McCaffrey in fantasy points this year if McCaffrey doesn't stay healthy.
I'll go with Bijan Robinson will surpass him in fantasy points if Elijah Mitchell stays healthy, and it'll be a bigger part of the mix than people think as they try to keep Christian McCaffrey healthy for the playoffs.
All right, well,
Dan
thank you.
has
At least
again failed the assignment.
No, you failed the assignment. You changed the blank.
I said names only.
Job,
that was the assignment.
All right, fine. There will be blank amount of tight ends with wide receiver 1 production this season. I'm saying 0. Jamey?
2. Sam Laporte or Travis Kelce.
1 for me, Travis Kelce.
There is no way that Sam Laporta is going to have top 12 wide receiver production. Jalen Hyatt will rank top blank in fantasy for 2024. This one was for Dan, but you could start, Dan.
Top 42.
Top 142.
And Jameson Williams will be a top blank wide receiver in 2024.
30.
40.
All right. That was good, guys. Thank you. Thanks to both of you. Great job today, fellas.
Dan
Thank you guys, and I promise I'll do better next time in Family Feud and all games.
All right, that's going to do it for fantasy football today. I want to thank all of you for watching here on CBS Sports Network. Don't forget to check out our podcast, Fantasy Football Today, anywhere you listen to podcasts or on YouTube, and all of the great content from Jamey and Dan, CBSSports.com. I'm Adam Aizer. Talk to you next time.